get started. I hope you all had get a chance to actually look at the projects and the slide deck that I sent out yesterday. Anybody has any questions on that one before we proceed on this?
Assalamu alaikum, Gulbhai. Yes, I have a question regarding risk and issue. So I have always seen the risk register, and that's always on the priority. The issue is what I understood is already exists within the project, but we never put that on priority. So wanted to know why we always consider risk, not issue first.
No, anything that is an issue, we already have it, something that is already there. If we have an issue already identified, then we have to have a mitigation strategy, or we need to have a counter or the response to that issue right away. So that's not a risk anymore. Risk only anything that may not occur, but we don't know exactly whether that is something that it will occur, when it would occur, and what would be the timeline for that one. So those we should, if we have a risk, we have an issue that needs to be addressed right away. That should be part of your either a project constraint, which we will cover today, or it could be a project requirement, which we already covered in the last week's class. So it has to be one way, one or the other.
Okay, so which means if you
speaking, then please go on mute. Sorry, a lot of disturbance. Okay. Thank you.
So just from my understanding, when we make the risk register, we don't consider issue at that time, and we do not allocate any budget or any resources for the issue management.
No, issue management, we do allocate it, but that's already there. Okay, somebody is not able to hear. Is that is everyone else able to hear me and properly?
Yeah, you are coming. Your voice is clear. Yeah.
Your voice, yeah. We can hear you.
It must be a problem on the recipient side.
Okay. So it's
your voice is clear.
Okay, good. So we do, if we have an issue, it's before the start of the project, we already know that it's there in our issue register. We have to consider that as either a constraint to the project or it's a requirement to the project. So either one of these cases, we just have to address it immediately as a requirement or a constraint. But we do allocate the budget and the resources for that one, as well as we allocate the budget and resources for any of the constraints or the requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else has any comments before we start? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. So today we have a long full class. Actually, it's gonna be, we have to cover everything that is remaining in our chapter 5, and we will just cover the complete chapter 5 for today. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sister Rihanna, you were having some issues in hearing us. Is that problem solved now, or still you're not able to hear us? Okay, we probably still having some issues. So if anybody can just message her to log out and log back in again, then hopefully that would resolve.
Yeah, I told her. I think she's trying.
Okay, good. Great.
Gulbhai, this is Abid. I might have to leave at 5:30. I got to go to.
That's fine. We'll share the recording as we did. So yesterday I was trying to I uploaded the recording, everything, to YouTube as well. So were you able to see that, and the link is working?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, let's get started. Today we have a long list of things, but the main thing what our agenda for today is gonna be just the planning process groups that is gonna continue. We discussed it earlier that we have about 24 process groups, processes in that process group. Out of those 24, we covered 5 of them yesterday, and today we will continue to do the remaining of those. Again, it's just a reminder, it's the same process groups practice guide book that we have been covering so far. And remember that this is the one that is covering about 50% of your exam. So 50% of the exam is coming from the process groups and processes. That's why we started with this one. We still have about another 50% that needs to be covered. All right. So yesterday we talked about stakeholder management in the initiation process. One of the things that, and I kind of a little bit disagree with the PMBOK processes list of sequencing on that one, that they have put the stakeholder engagement plan till the end of all the process groups that we have. But I have actually brought it up right in the beginning at the very first one, because the reason is we did discuss stakeholder engagement. We did discuss identification of the stakeholders, but we have this one as engagement plan as part of the process groups as well. So that should be discussed immediately as we are going through the initiation process. So the process is developing approaches to involve project stakeholders. That's basically, you already identified the stakeholders, and now it's time for you to just look at the stakeholder and see who is doing, which stakeholder is required to do what, and how we are going to be engaging them. That's the main goal of the stakeholders in this one. And then the other thing that we do is that we have the stakeholders identify their needs, their expectations, interest, potential impact on the project. That also we discussed it yesterday. So I don't want to go over the stakeholders completely because we did discuss it, but I wanted to make sure that we share and discuss the ITTO for stakeholder engagement plan. So in this one, as we discussed earlier as well, that we have a project management plan that is going to be there, project charter that is obviously is needed, and we have agreements, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets there. The main thing that we have here, that is what is in the project plan. And project plan will include your resource management plan, communication management plan, risk management plan. You not necessarily, by the time you are preparing this for the first time in writing your stakeholder engagement plan, you will have all of these things ready. But eventually you will have all those plans ready and included in your project as well. So in that case, when you do it in at that time, if you think that that is impacting your stakeholders engagement plan, for example, the communication plan is one of the main thing. When you actually prepare your communication plan, and at that time you identify that, oh, we do actually have to change our engagement model, you can actually change it. There is no nothing stopping you to change the stakeholder engagement plan right during the whole planning process, while you have in the beginning you already created a plan, and then later on you think that we need to change it. There is absolutely nothing wrong in that one. You will create some the project documents like assumption logs. We talked about it yesterday. Change log if there is a change control process. If this is the very first time you're doing it, then the only change you can see is the change in the project charter. Then issue and risk log that we have over here, it's listed as separate. As I told you, I normally use a risk and issue log combined. And I shared a list of templates yesterday in an email. Did you all get that one as well or not?
You did.
Okay, great. So just use those. Not necessarily you have to use each one of them, but use those as and where appropriate, where you need it. And while you are actually making progress in your project, you will see actually those as well coming in. Very handy. Okay. The tools and techniques that we have for this one is pretty much most of the tools and techniques we already discussed yesterday. I don't see anything additional other than the data analysis, where we have assumptions and constraints analysis, and also the root cause analysis. Root cause means that why are we engaging one specific stakeholder at this stage? So those things need to be mentioned. Other than that, it's pretty much straightforward that we discussed yesterday. Anybody has any question on this before we proceed?
Gulbhai, I have a question.
Mhm.
So I know you promoted the stakeholder engagement earlier than the schedule plan. But if you look at here, right, so the input documents are your project schedule, but you haven't prepared the project schedule yet. And your other look at the input. So isn't that these documents are input to even make your stakeholder engagement?
Great observation. Very good question. Yes. So this is also this is one of them. Change control is another one that we have. If you also see that stakeholder register is also one of them. So we already identified the stakeholder register as well. So project schedule is gonna be one of the document that we will have. We will prepare it during the course of the project. But if you look at the stakeholder engagement plan, not necessarily that is gonna be very in the very beginning. You will have the complete stakeholder engagement ready with that. One of the things that you can do is once you are done with the project schedule, at that time you have to revisit all your plans and see does this plan has any impact on any of the other plans that I have prepared. And if the stakeholder engagement plan is the one that is going to be impacted, then you can go back and revisit that one as well. Can anybody give me an example of why we would need why would project schedule impact the stakeholder engagement plan?
If we have a schedule and if we are not sticking to it, we log that and we would know how much we diverted from the baseline schedule.
Okay, makes sense. Anybody else?
Stakeholders need to know like the timeline of the project, like when it's going to be delivered or how it's going to be executed, and maybe they have a stake in that too, you know, for the success of the project.
That is your data. Right now we are talking about the plan. So if you have made already a plan that, for example, I will be having a stakeholder meeting once a month, you can set it up in the beginning of the project. And then if the timeline would change, you can go back and change it. You can inform them during our next meeting that, hey, there is a slippage in this one. Instead of going everything green, right now I see that there is a slippage, potential slippage in our project, and the timeline will change. But that's not the part of the plan. That's the actual data you are talking about.
Maybe this particular project is an input or a required, the results of this is required for another project where the stakeholders are engaged in that other one also, right?
That's a good point. So one of the things that may impact is that you may have to add or update the stakeholder list, or you have to look at how you are engaging the stakeholders, and that stakeholder might be another system, another legislation, something like that. So for example, you have a new legislation coming in. You know that there's a new legislation coming in, and if your project is finishing before that legislation is in effect, then it's going to be easier for you to just complete it and proceed. By the time you complete your project scheduling, then you find out that my project is not going to be ready by the time this legislation, the new law, is in effect, which means that I will have 2 or 3 more stakeholders that I need to engage. That will cost me more money and all that as well. So you have to then engage with them as well, identify them as a stakeholder, and have a engagement plan how to engage them as well. That's one of the examples that we have. Okay, so yes, the project schedule may impact, but that's why these are all the different documents. You may or may not have all these documents that's going to be impacted. And in the beginning, your project schedule might be just a high level that it will take about approximately 10 months to finish a project. And sometimes that is just based off of your expert judgment. You don't have a data gathering done yet. You haven't actually done a proper root cause analysis. You haven't done any estimation yet. But this is just expert judgment that you are thinking about it.
So is it fair to say that initially what you're talking here is a stakeholder engagement just to get started, more like the one you have earlier, right? In a initializing phase, you already have that stakeholder, initialization. So I'm just trying to answer, because at this engagement, right, you don't even have agreements also with you. So what is the reason of doing this before having all your required inputs? Is this like a mini or a pre-engagement, and then once you have more mature data, then you again, like you just said, do more final later?
So no, I think one of the thing that what I'm explaining here is the stakeholder management plan we have to prepare, but it is subject to changes later on. Yes, it is. It can change. However, the thing that we have not done yet is we haven't done a complete project planning. We haven't prepared the complete project schedule. So that's what I'm saying, that once you prepare a stakeholder management engagement plan, it is going to be an engagement plan that's ready, but not necessarily this is going to be in the very initiation of the process of the project. This would not be 100% ready. You may or may not need to change it later on.
I think yeah, I think I know my confusion. So the process you are now talking here may not necessarily be this is the order we will be following. It's just randomly we are talking about, but order is something we have to decide depending upon the inputs required for that process development. Is that correct?
The processes that we have, some of them may go in sequence, some of them will go in parallel. For example, you cannot have a complete project schedule, you cannot have a complete estimation until you have your project scheduling activities started. Okay, and we will cover that part later on as well. And you cannot have your complete project planning done without identifying who's going to be your stakeholders. So you do need to identify stakeholders in the initiation process.
No, that part I understand. But what I was saying that in this class, right, you're not really following the order of this process needs to be developed. You're just going randomly, but that order is something we have to decide when you start working on the project. Is that correct understanding?
It's not random. It is some of those are going to go in parallel. Some of them are going to go in sequence. So we will talk about that one as well. As I mentioned, identification of stakeholders, for example, project charter, that is absolutely in the beginning. It is not random. It is required in the beginning of the project. So for example, if I come in and say, can I have a project plan? Can I start working on a project plan without having a project charter? No, you cannot.
Right.
You need to have a project charter. That's one of the things. Can I set up a communication plan without having a complete list of stakeholders? No, you do need to have a list of stakeholders. You need to identify the stakeholders before you start preparing a communication plan, because that will tell you who needs to be communicated. So some of those are gonna go in sequence, but some of them can go in parallel as well. And preparing a project schedule and preparing all these other plans as well. Some of them you can actually start in parallel, and I'll show you how you can do it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Give me a second. It's wow. Okay, finally. One of the things that we discussed yesterday was requirement traceability matrix. So I wanted to share this one. This is, by the way, available in this book as well that you have that we are covering. So this is also covered in that book. That traceability matrix. What are the different type of the things? So we have a requirement description. We have business need, opportunities, goals, and objectives. Can anybody tell me what it is? This second column, business needs, opportunities, goals, and objectives. This is coming from the source. This is coming from your stakeholders. These are the expectations from your stakeholders. That's what it is. Okay. The third one is the project objectives. The project objectives are coming from where? Any idea?
Opportunities are also coming from the stakeholders.
Sometimes they do. Well, you can have both. You can have opportunities in as organization goal, but at the same time they are coming from business. That's why we said business needs.
What would be some of the examples of these business needs, opportunities, goals from the customer side?
Correct. Okay. So project sorry, Sohaib, did you ask a question or you were suggesting it?
That was a question.
Oh, okay, sorry. I think I missed that part. So opportunities could be that you have so one of the project is, let me give you one example that is happening here in Folsom. Folsom is trying to build not a build, it's already there. It's called Placerville Sacramento Valley Railroad project, which is basically just to provide a recreational that rail experience with the engine to the residents here. And this is a completely a public-private partnership. So Folsom City is not paying a single dime for that one, but one of the private companies is the one who's actually working on that. It is an opportunity for us. So they are stakeholders because they are making some money out of it, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for for our residents as well, that we can use that one. So that's one of the example of the opportunity. We have the goals and objectives in other stakeholders. They will be identifying as well, and we also need to find out what is the business need for that. Do we have a business need or not? So this is kind of, they are claiming that it's going to increase the tourism. That could be a business need for us as well. And then we have a project objective. Project objectives are the ones that normally come from the organization. So we have a project objective as an organization who has certain objectives needs to be met, and then based on that we identify the stakeholders, and then we talk to them, and they should be aligned with each other. The project objectives should be aligned with the business needs as well. Some of those project objectives will map one-on-one with the requirement. Sometime it might be the same project objective for all the requirements as well. So if there is a repetition in that one, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Can you please give us an example for each one of them? One example for business need and project objective.
Right. So business need, I told you that, for example, this railroad project that is starting in they're already there, but it's they wanted a continuation of that one, which is going to go for the next 5 years or so. That is the business. Tourism is going to be one business needs as well. Project objective could be that we want to increase more revenue for Folsom. That would be one of the project objective, that we wanted to have a more revenue for Folsom, and this is gonna be that's one objective. The other objective could be that we wanted to preserve the historic nature of Folsom, city of Folsom. That could be another organization, which means at the city level, we have this one. So that's another example of project objective. The third one we have is a WBS deliverable. So remember we discussed yesterday the work breakdown structure. So for each one of these requirements, we can map it to a deliverable in WBS that we prepared. We discussed it yesterday. And that will basically tell us that this requirement is covered under this particular deliverable number in WBS. And I shared the template as well yesterday. So hopefully that would be a useful template for you that you have. The next one is a product design, which is basically completely covering that this particular WBS deliverable that we have, it is covered under what design. So for example, design could be a software design, could be a hardware design, could be a construction or any kind of a project, but you need to then mention that which particular piece in your design document is covering this particular requirement. So in this way, now we are able to actually look at a requirement and which has a associate ID number over there, 1.0, and that requirement is all the way tracked through business needs, project objectives, WBS. Then we cover the design part of that one. Then we also see that which piece of development has been done. For example, if it's a software project, then you can say that I have written this particular module or this piece of code that has been written. That is basically covering this particular requirement. And the last but not the least is the test cases. Remember, we discussed it in the beginning that requirement traceability matrix is very important for testers. So you give this document to the testing team and tell them that, hey, these are the requirements. We need to create test cases for that. So we will know that test case is there.
So,
anybody have any idea why this particular document is very, very important for project manager? I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Isn't this just a binding contract, essentially, what you're going to deliver?
It also keeps in tracks of the project status, comparing the project status with this.
I think you're trying at the end to accomplish each requirement. So it's like, to me, it looks like a log of all the requirements that are necessary in the project and then their life cycle and whether they've been achieved or not in one place.
Good point. Anybody else?
Completion of the project.
It gives a granularity of every requirement, whether and who is responsible for it.
Yeah, I would say this document lists the expectations and of the key deliverables we're looking to complete for the life cycle of this project.
Okay. Anybody else?
Very useful for the communication and as well, right?
Okay. Good answers. The main thing is that this is not, by the way, this is not the binding contract. This contract, we already have it. This is the list of the requirements where we would know that have we covered all the requirements or not. So one of the biggest pitfalls that you will find in any of the project, and that is some of the requirements are going to fall through the cracks. You document a requirement, it's written somewhere in your requirement document, which is a very big one, and you don't have a traceability matrix prepared for that one. And what's going to happen is that somebody's going to miss one or two of those requirements. So to input to this document is your requirement specification document. So you prepare a requirement specification document, and then you copy paste even from your requirement document to each one of those requirement description here with an ID number. Then you can track it all in your ID. Anybody has any idea where else this is going to be very helpful in during our planning?
How much time each of this is going to take? So
I was going to say resource allocation and seeing how many of these you can do in parallel.
Yes, and both of these are going to be in what document? Which plan? It's going to be in our project schedule. So when we actually prepare a project schedule, we will have resources that are identified. We will have the timeline that identified for that one. And we will have the sequencing of them as well. So each one of these requirements, some of them are dependent on each other. And sometimes it's very difficult, or one of the biggest problem or failure of the project is that you fail to identify the right dependency on different requirements. So this is going to be a very helpful tool that you will use for your project. Okay. So when you are working on your project, I want you to start thinking about preparing a required traceability matrix for your project as well. Okay, let's move to the next one. Schedule management plan is another one of the very, very important project plan. People do think that schedule management is the only, they confuse this one with the project plan as well. But the project plan consists of everything else that we have, which we have already covered so far, and we are going to cover the rest of them as well. Schedule is one of them in there. What exactly is this one doing? Is basically establishing your procedures, your policies, documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing, controlling, and the overall schedule of that project. And the basic thing it provides us is the direction and the guidance that how a project schedule will be covered and how the project schedule will be managed throughout the life cycle of the project. In this one, what is the main thing that we need for a project schedule?
The project requirements.
That is correct.
Delivery timelines. WBS.
Yes, WBS, which we are preparing.
Delivery timelines.
So you need your requirements. You need your WBS, because WBS is doing what? Is basically dissecting your requirements and dividing them into a smaller chunks. So that's your WBS. And that is very, very important. That's why we have a scope management plan as an input for this one. Then we also need to look at it, what development approach we are using for this. I take one example of software projects. So do you have an approach that we are gonna have all the requirements at once, and then we will start going into the design analysis, design, and then the development? Or are we gonna take a set of requirements at a time, complete that, and then we go back and then find another set of requirement and then add them to this one? So that's your development approach as well. That will help.
So brother, what is this like what kind of like a data analysis we do over here? Like, do we have like some kind of like example?
So one of the things that you need to do is we have to do a lot of when we are doing the scheduling for this one, you have to think about what is the type of this project. So let me ask you, earlier I gave an example of a software project. Let's say you are a civil engineer, and I'm not a civil engineer, so my apologies in advance if I'm saying something or assuming something stupid here. But just for the sake of our discussion, if you have to build or construct a bridge, can you go with the requirements of the bridge like one piece at a time and then go back and then find out what are the other requirements and then go back and start building the bridge?
No.
Not.
Yeah.
Which is different from in the software development. It is, in some cases, it is possible. But if you have, for example, a project where you are gonna go launch a rover to Mars, you still have to have all the requirements at one place before you launch a rover to the Mars. But if you are building something like a point of sale system, you know your goal is very clear, but the requirement wise it might change from place to place as well, from time to time, and you can always go back and then add more requirements, remove update some of the requirements, and then make those changes as well. So that's basically the difference between agile versus waterfall. Waterfall is you are collecting all the requirements and then you're doing it, that work. Whereas agile, you go with the flow, and then when you have additional requirements, you consider those additional requirements as changes to the project or next sprint, and based on that you make those changes. So that's where we do the alternate analysis. We need to think about it, what approach we are doing using over here. And that analysis, if for example the development approach was that we're going to go with the waterfall, we have to find out during our tools, using our tools and techniques, that is there any other way that we can do, or that is the only way we can do the project. So that's an example of that. And then at the end we will have a schedule management plan, which basically tells you when the schedule is going to be built, overall what is the timeline for that one, who are the recipients of this schedule management that will be looking into it, how often we update it, when are we gonna baseline this project, this schedule as well. Yesterday we covered the schedule, the scope baseline. That was very, very important. So today, once you do your project schedule as well, so that is another thing that you do, you baseline your project schedule. And that will tell you your plan versus actual eventually that you have, if there is a change during this process. Okay, questions?
So what will be the key elements in this schedule management plan? Like roles and responsibilities and stuff like that? I mean, sorry, I know that schedule baseline, and we talked about schedule baseline, but what other key elements we expect in this document?
So the schedule baseline is at the end when we will, once we have the output. The key things, key factors over here are the scope. You need to have a scope defined first. You need to have your approach ready. These are the two main things. Another thing that is not mentioned in this one in PMBOK that they have done, which is basically the requirement management plan. You need to have a requirements as well. The scope is a little bit higher level, but the requirement is also very, very important. When you are preparing a project schedule, you need to have your list of the very fairly detailed list of requirements there. That's what one of the system mentioned earlier was the WBS. And the WBS, why that is important, because that's gonna go into a little bit of more into the trenches, more detailed requirements have to be defined. And that's why these two I don't see as an input here, but I always consider as WBS and the requirement management plan. These are the two also the inputs that we use while we are preparing the schedule management plan. Okay. Now here we are when we are actually going into when we are actually preparing it. So we said that schedule management plan is there, which means that basically it's a high level wrapper which tells you what exactly are we doing, when are we going to be updating it, how this schedule is going to be managed, if there is a change to the schedule, when and how often we will make that change, when are we going to baseline that as well. So all those things that you have in your schedule management plan. And when you are defining the activities, basically, which I was earlier mentioning that we have the WBS that we have to prepare. How do you prepare those WBS? So this is the defining activities is a sub process within the schedule management plan. So that's why I'm explaining it here separately. The process of identifying and documenting specific actions to be performed to produce the project deliverables. Does that sound familiar? That's something we covered yesterday. That was a WBS. That's the basis for WBS. We are prepared.
Yes, that's correct. We use activities to build WBS.
Exactly. So we covered that one yesterday. What exactly, how are we actually building that one? So now we are going a little bit more into the details. How are we actually identifying and defining the activities? And then what we do, one of the main thing that we have is tools and techniques. The two things I want to mention, number 2 and number 3, decomposition. How do you do the decomposition, and why would you do a decomposition? I hope everyone.
Yeah, what do you mean by decomposition here? I didn't really. I mean, what terms is this?
That's right. Decomposition is basically
like smaller tasks.
Smaller tasks divided into smaller tasks. Oh, okay.
Right. So, for example, you are trying to build a house, and you wanted to build a room, and within that room, you decompose that one. That in my house, I want to build a room, and that room should have 2 windows and a door. You cannot have just all the walls, but there is no entrance. So you need to have an entrance door, and you need to have a window as well. Now, how that window would look like, how many windows are going to be there, how many doors are going to be there. This is basically the decomposition of the task of a project of building a room.
So these decomposition tasks, when you have decomposed them, you also assign some sort of schedule to it, meaning like deadlines to it. Correct. Is that also part of that this thing?
Absolutely right. And that's why we are defining those activities, so that we should not say that when we are giving it to the contractor saying, okay, I have prepared a plan, go and build a room, and here is a design for that. And then you will say, okay, so it means rooms consist of 4 walls, period. Is that what you want? I say, yep, sure. Just go build 4 walls and a roof. And then say, okay, but there is no window in this one. There is no door entry and exit door here. There's no closet in this one. So you need to have those details. You have to decompose that. You say, oh no, I do mean that there has to be a door, but you need to actually define it in your requirement. So these are the activities that you have. And eventually that door will be, is it a wooden door? It's gonna be a metal door. What kind of door it is? What should be the design of that one? You have to assign resources and cost for that one as well. That's why we are dividing into decomposing it into smaller categories, small activities. Rolling wave planning. Do you know what the rolling wave planning is?
Yeah, it's basically incremental planning, right? You focus on the short term for phase 1 or phase 2, and then you continuously improve on that.
Correct. And that's why I chose the example of building a house or building a room. Building a room is a rolling wave planning of building a house. So if you are building a house and you know that I have this whole big piece of land, I want to build a house over here eventually, but right now I only have budget for a room to be built, so I'm just gonna build one room and the roof on top. I will think about building the other rooms or rest of the part later on. Or you have a house that you build, but you have a big backyard as well. And you can say it's a rolling wave planning, that I don't want to plan what exactly am I going to put it in my backyard, whether it's going to be a swimming pool, it's a grass, it's all concrete. I'll think about it when my rest of the house is complete. So that is one of the part that you will think about it later on. That's a rolling wave planning. By the way, throughout this training, there are a number of tools and techniques you will see. Some of them I will explain you here. Some of them I would not explain you because there are so many of them. At the end of this book, we have a list of one full chapter just on the inputs and outputs, and there's another one chapter only on the tools and techniques. You can just go in that one and then read through those techniques. That basically that tells you the estimation techniques, planning techniques. Those are different type of techniques. So you can just read those. That's your own, at your own time. When you are actually reviewing it, you have to review those as well. But the important ones I'll also explain you if you need anything. But if you review that one and then you have question about it, the next day you can come back and then you can ask the question to me and I'll try to explain it. Okay. All right, the outputs are activity lists, activity attributes, milestone list. So some of those activities are going to be your milestones. Change request, if there are any. Throughout the project, we keep it as one of the input as well as the output both. And then we have schedule baseline, because project plan updates, and then the schedule baseline might update as well. And that cost baseline as well will be updated because of that.
Gulbhai, I have a question related to the rolling wave planning. From your example, you were saying that so you don't have overhead to plan everything ahead. But let's say one of the requirements, say for example, you were giving the house example, you are giving the budget that that you cannot cross, say 1.5 million or 2 million or something like that. Then how you do the rolling wave planning? Like you try to squeeze in as many phases, or how you how you do that, you know? So
yeah, it depends on your project and your. That's why yesterday when we discussed the requirement, we said what are the basic bare minimal, or what we call it in a software industry, we call it a MVP, minimum viable product. So you have to plan for minimum viable product one way or other in the beginning, and then you can have a rolling wave for the rest of them. For example, if you buy a house, and you can say it's a brand new house, I need this house, should be the design. And then there is a backyard, and you haven't actually thought about it, that how you're going to be building your backyard can cost you from $10,000 to $50,000 depending upon what you want to build in your backyard. So based on that one, you can decide. But you can say that, hey, I can even still live with this house, live in this house, even I have a complete dirt in my backyard, that's fine. The minimum thing that you want is just a fence around your backyard, and that's it. So that would be your minimum requirement. After that, everything that you do, that's going to be later on. You can say, well, I will do it when I have more money. So maybe this year I'm just building a basic house. The next year I'll think about building or updating my backyard.
So if you're going with this concept of this minimal viable product, where do you describe it? Because I assume this is something that the customer will have to sign off on as well.
This is something that activities, when you are actually building, that's why you have to have your stakeholders define what the minimum viable product is. So you need to go, I know these are again tools and techniques, not necessarily you have to use it, each one of them. If you think that I have a very set of requirements, and these requirements are non-budgeable, there is no flexibility in this one, then don't go for rolling wave planning. Then go with the bottom-up planning approach, which we'll cover it later on. But rolling wave is the one where you can think of some areas where you can actually think of, okay, this is not included. Remember when I am just using this example of buying a house, and whenever people who have experience in buying a brand new house with where the builder has just built it, they have that in your contract as an exclusion, that the backyard is not part of that. Building a backyard is not part of this price. Right? Anybody has that experience yet?
Yes.
Yep. So those are the things that are very common, that they'll say that is excluded in this one. So that's why when the customer has to sign on that contract, they would know that this is something that is included and this is something that is excluded. So things that are excluded, you will add that one in exclusion list. Okay, all right, going. Now we defined the activities. Now the next step is to sequence those activities. Earlier we were talking about sequencing our project. Now we, in addition to, the sequencing our processes, that is, some of those processes may or may not go only in sequence, they may go in parallel as well. Sequencing your activities are also exactly the same. Some of the activities you can do in parallel, some of the activities you cannot do in parallel. Brother, it's very difficult to understand what you're saying. Can you please? Okay, we'll get his question when he's back. Anybody has any question on the sequencing? This is pretty straightforward.
How is sequencing defining or different from defining your milestones?
Okay, yeah. Can you repeat the question again?
How is this the sequence activities different from defining your milestones?
Okay, defining your milestones are, let me give you an example of the same buying a house, because which is very common. You are building a house, and your sequencing of activities is you have this one bedroom you are building. That should have a door and 2 windows, and then you have to paint. And then your milestones might be that once you have built the whole room and it has already been painted, it has all the woodwork and everything has been completed, that's your milestone that you have achieved. Then you can say that now this one bedroom is 100% ready. But your sequencing is, you have to, you cannot have your windows. Maybe you can start building your windows of them in parallel, but you cannot actually fit your windows until your walls are up.
So your sequences are more granular. It's essentially the steps you're taking in what order.
In what order, exactly. Okay. So it's basically you have to have your walls up before you actually put your door and the windows in there. So that is sequencing. Once you have all the doors and the walls and the windows are up, and your closet is ready, and then you have painted your room, that's where you can say, now that's my milestone number 1. The bedroom 1 is ready. Got it? One of the things that you have to define in this one, I want to emphasize, is dependency determination and integration. How do you do that? Anybody has any idea? So the dependency that we try to find out is basically what is it needed first. And so the example is, again, if I order to my contractors that you have to build this room, and they can say, yeah, we will have all the walls of the room ready in about 3 weeks time. And then I have my carpenter who says, oh, your door is going to be ready in 1 week time. And once the carpenter is done with the door, can I ask the carpenter to come and install the door without having any walls?
No.
The answer is no, because you do not have. So it means your door has a dependency to be installed after the walls are up. So that is your dependency. So even though that it's ready, it's built, but it's sitting in carpenter's shop and it cannot be installed until the walls are up. So that's another thing. Another example is foundation. If you don't have a foundation of the house laid down properly, can I ask an electrician to come in and do the all the electric work? The answer is no. They are dependent on, once the electrician can only come in and then do his or her work when the house structure is already built or part of the structure is already built. That's very important. So you need to think about all those as well. And people use that project management information system for those. There are a number of information systems that identify that can help you in that you can enter the information in there. But this is again very high level. There are a number of other tools and techniques available. I normally use for sequencing of my activities and identification of my activities and then scheduling them using one of those like Smartsheet or Microsoft Project. Those are the different tools that we can use for any kind of project planning in this. Okay. Now,
Brother, quick question, please. Like, I'm kind of thinking there's a dead loop here and thinking about resources as well. Like, I mean, like you decompose the project into like smaller parts. And then let's say you identified like some parts are dependent on each other, but obviously let's say some parts are not dependent on each other. Like let's say you want to do 2 doors, right? But then if you look at resources, like suppose you're doing a software project and you decompose into parts, and then someone is doing front end, someone is doing back end, stuff like that. But then if you have one engineer who has experience in some area, he's the one who's going to work on this task. Once he finishes it, like you don't have another engineer to pick up the other task. So it's like he's the one who's going to do 5 consecutive tasks, and that's going to stretch out the timeline.
That is correct.
So it kind of creates dependency when like just the parts themselves are independent, but you only have one resource, let's say.
Correct. A very good point. So we have a dependency. There is dependency on the activities, and then there are dependencies on the resources as well. We will cover that one when we go into the resource planning, but you are absolutely right. So sometimes even if you are building, for example, you're building 2 houses, totally independent 2 houses, and you just bought 2 houses, and there's a possibility that the builder can come in and then have a set of people who can actually work on house number 1, and then another set of people who can work on house number 2. Both of these houses are totally independent of each other. They're gonna be built. Let's say it takes them 3 months to build it or 8 months to build. They can actually start in January and be done in June, done, both of them. But what if we have some of the resources who are the manpower who's working on both of them, they are shared. And still it is possibility that they even if they are shared, they can still continue to do, because not everyone is ready and available and required to work on that project all the time. But if we have your people who are on critical path, which means that that is going to be the people who are required, one engineer, there's only one engineer who can do both of these, and that one engineer cannot be at both of these places at the same time. So you do need to have that dependency identified and listed down as a project manager. That's your responsibility. Because if you don't do it, then they're gonna say, oh, you said that it's gonna be ready in 6 months. We ordered 2 houses, and both houses were supposed to be built in 6 months. They both should be ready by starting in January. They should be ready in June. But then, which you fail to mention that, oh no, by the way, we have only one engineer who can work on both of them. So he can only be available after first 3 months of the first house is built or has already started. Only then that he can switch to other one. So there is a possibility if it's a complete sequence, 100% dependency, that way it will go with finish the first work and then go start the next one. Finish the first house and then start the next house. In that way, our timeline has gone from 6 months to 12 months because it's doubled. But if there is a way that you can do some activities that you can do, start this activity and then after that there is a lag, put some lag in there, and then after that you can start the next one as well. So it may go in the total timeline for both building both of these houses might be 9 months instead of 12 months. That is also one. And that brings up the next one. These are the different type of relationships or the dependencies we have. The first one I mentioned, finish to start, which means that you can finish first and then start the next one. It's a complete sequence, 100% sequence. The next one could be it's finish to finish, which means that you can start any of these together or in a different timeline as well, but they cannot be finished unless the other work is already completed. And that the example of that one is this ordering to my carpenter the building the door. I can ask my contractors to start building this room, and at the same time I can ask the carpenter to start building a door for this. They can both work in parallel, but the door cannot be installed until the walls are ready. So it's a finish to finish. Understood? The third one is interesting, start to start. Anybody can give me an example of start to start? No experience of start to start? That is basically your, yep.
Like start digging and you're gonna start putting wires underground.
Yeah, you don't. You have to. Well, I'm doing this swimming pool thing, so you need to fill up the swimming pool first before you start putting the concrete. So I need to have the first one done before the second one starts.
Okay, that's a good example. Anybody else? Any other example?
Well, like pipelines, like you can start digging maybe and then start installing like while the digging is going on, right? Like hand in hand.
Correct. So they can
Yeah.
you can only start one task if the other task is already started. So you can start both of them in parallel as well, and they can start but the only time one work would be started if you have the other one that is already also started. So that's a start to start thing.
But Gulbhai, I have a question. Are these not independent? Some of these are not independent projects. So does it fall under more of a project management? I guess the way I have seen it is you're using more of a scheduler or different tool to track dependencies and monitor those, but then these are two independent projects. So as far as the project management is concerned, they are I mean those responsibility falls somewhere else with a different tracking tool and stuff. Is
not necessarily. So some of those tasks that I mentioned, the reason I gave you example of two houses because they are both like similar type of the task that you're doing. Still you have a dependency on that one, but main thing is it is quite possible that your whole project is to build a whole actually the complete neighborhood. You have to build a full colony for that. If you are building you are a project manager with a builder, and your responsibility is to build these 10 houses and make sure that these are the number of. So I'll give you one scenario. You are a project manager. You are appointed to complete work on a project, and your project is that the builder is saying that I need to build in the south side of 50 about 50 homes. So these 50 homes is your responsibility. And by the way, here is the budget for each one of these homes, which is let's say $1 million. And then here are the 50 people you have available to build these houses. How would you do that? They are sometime, so you have only 50 people available, and you find out that I can use these 50 people. You cannot say that, okay, I can have 50 houses, one person each house. So these are the 50 houses will be built exactly at the same time. Then you need to estimate that I need, for example, 15 people or 20 people to build a house. So at any given time, I can start maximum 3 houses, right? With 50 people, you can start maximum 3 houses. But you can, it is quite possible that you can actually decompose your work and say, I have 5 people who are only for foundation. So I can instead of starting or maybe 10 people who are good at, or their responsibility is to lay down the foundation. And that is my first task to do. So in order for me to start houses, I can start 10 houses at the same time instead of 50 or instead of 3. And once those 10 foundation is done, then the designer and the other people can come into those houses, and then these 10 can move on to the next 10. While they are laying down the foundation for the next 10, your work on the first 10 houses is already in progress as well. And then by the time they're done with the next one, and if the timing is exactly the same, then they can move on to the next 10. And then these 10 people can move on to the next 10. So in that way, you have to sequence it properly. So that's your dependency. That's where you have to identify which task is finished to start, which task is finish to finish, which task is start to start, and the ones that's start to finish.
I think the example that I gave, Brother Gul, is the first one, finish to start.
Yeah, that's the most common one. That's why we said finish to start is an example for one task, for one of those. But the finish to finish is that the one that you started that one, but they moved on to the next one, but you still have your first 10 homes are not ready yet. You started those 10 as well. You're still working. That's a work in progress in that. So but then those 10 people who are only focused on the foundation, they are not required for the first 10 now. They can move on to the next 10. That's the example. Okay, so these are the different. So when you actually build any kind of a project plan, these relationships are going to be very, very critical, that you need to identify who's doing what. And this is what earlier one of the brother mentioned, that you have some of those tasks where you will have dependency not only on tasks but also on the people as well. So you need to also look at it, that what percentage of your time is being spent on this one. So for example, as a resource, and we're going to cover that resource later on, but just to throw an example over here, if you have a resource who is an engineer, his time is required, only 50% of his time is required to build one house at a time. So which means that he can start working on 2 houses at the same time. Right? So he can start both of these in parallel. It doesn't have to be finished to start, because then you have to look at his or her capacity, whether it's a 100% capacity or a 50% capacity. That's why when you use some of these tools like Smartsheet or Microsoft Project, you will find that you look at the resource allocation, and you will find that some of these resources are, maybe you thought that that person is available, but that person is already allocated 150% of the time. Which means what? Either the planning is not right, or the resource is really working, instead of 40 hours a week, that person is working 60 hours a week. Right? So you do define all those things in your project schedule in the beginning, that how many hours a week you are actually, this person is going to be working, and how many hours are required for this certain project to be completed. Any other question on the relationship or the dependencies? All right. All right. So the next one we have is project estimation. Now we have done the sequencing already completed. Identification of the activities are done. but we don't know how much time it's going to take for one house or one particular activity to be completed. So for that one, in the inputs that we have are mostly these project documents that you need to focus on. You have a resource calendar, resource requirements, risk analysis to be done on that one. You have activities and their attributes, and any kind of your assumptions that you have made, they should be there as well. Now, this one of the things that you see in this one of the bullet points says resource breakdown structure. So it's basically the resource breakdown structure is only that how much time each resource is available for. That's what it's why it is called resource breakdown structure. It's nothing but sometimes people get confused with this one with the work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is one thing. Resource breakdown structure is the one where the resources that how much time each resource is allocated for this project. If any of you have ever worked in a metrics organization where you have shared resources and then they are working at any given time, one resource is working on 4 or 5 different projects, then how would you do that?
Basically, we agree upon the percentage of the time that they would be spending on this, and then for how many months or weeks or whatever it is that we define.
Correct. So we say that when we actually allocate a resource, we ask them that, hey, I need, we go to the resource manager and I ask them that I need 4 resources from your team, and I need 4 of them to be either 100% on my project, or I need 20% of their time allocated to my project. So that way, that means that they have about 80% of their time is still available. They can work on the other projects. Or if I go and ask them, ask the resource manager, hey, I need 2 people from your team, 100% on this project. And he can say, no, I have only these 2 available. They are the maximum time they can allocate is 50%. So now that brings up that question that how do we actually break down that one? So that's the resource breakdown structure for that person, that one particular resource is only available 50% of the time.
And it also depends on how much you're ready. Yeah, the resource may also be available 100% of the time, but then there may be some other dependencies for which you're not probably not going to use that resource for 100% of the time. So you'll have to probably decide on all of those dependencies and then define the resources, right?
And that's why we have to define the dependency, and it's both ways. You can ask for a resource for 100% of the time, and then they can say it's not available. Or you can go back and tell them that, hey, I need only this resource for 50% of the time. I don't need 100% of the time. You can use this person give this person another project, and that project would be good for another 50%, but I can only use 20 hours a week for this person. That way you will have, and there are nowadays, most of the projects are like that. Most of the projects, we have a resource pool available, and you can go to the resource manager and ask for the resource based on your needs of the project. Okay, now the other things that we have, tools and techniques. We have estimating techniques. We have a parametric, analogous, 3-point, bottom-up estimations. All these are the different type of the techniques. We are not going to cover all of them in this session, but you should actually go back after this class and review them. Some of these I will actually review them with example as well later on. You will see that what those different estimating techniques are. There is another one which is one of my very favorite one, that's called a Delphi technique for estimation. That's not listed in this one, but these are all the different type of tools and techniques for estimation. And what at the end of this one, what happens is you have a duration estimation and basis for the estimate. These are the 2 main things that you have. What was the basis for this estimate, and what is the duration of each one of those activities? And then you have your other project documents update, which means your assumption log is going to be updated. You have your lesson learned, if there is one, that's going to be updated. You have your activity attributes, if there is any change in that one, they are also going to be updated. So here are some of them that we discussed earlier. So estimation techniques. We are not going to go into very detail of that one, but I just wanted to have this one as a slide. You can even, instead of trying to dig into the book, you can also find some of them in the slide deck. Parametric is basically, it's historical data based. 3-point is same thing. It's optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. So we use that one. What is the optimistic approach estimation? What is the pessimistic estimation? And then what is the most likely one that is going to happen? An example is that MCF MPR was going to be renovated. What is our optimistic? What was our pessimistic? And what was our most likely estimation for that one in terms of hours? And then we use that one. We use same way. We optimistic plus pessimistic plus 4 times the most likely, and divide it all, add all of them and divide it by 6. That will give you the chart that will tell you exactly how much time you think it's gonna take. So that's called a 3-point estimate. Okay. Bottom-up estimating is my favorite for all smaller projects. For bigger projects, I don't go with this one. The reason is bottom-up estimating is very accurate, but it requires pretty much all the parameters. So unless you have every single parameter detail given, it's very difficult to go with the bottom-up estimating, but it's very accurate. That's the thing. So you go to your work breakdown structure, you go to the nth level of your activity, start adding and estimating that activity, then go one step up and then do that activity, and then go one step up and then do that activity. In that way, you will have all of those. Whenever I do my project planning in activities, even though I'm not doing the bottom-up estimating for each one of those activities, some of the activities which I put them as that these are the high-level plan that I have or estimate, I put that one in, but the way I build my project plan is like that I will have a bottom-up on that one. In that way, it will basically tell you overall that how much time total your whole project is going to take. That's more important. So that's why bottom-up estimating, we can do it, but mostly it's done for a smaller tasks within a project, but not for the whole very large projects. Because when you do it for the large projects, you need to have all the details. But if you have all your details where you have a complete work breakdown structure available, then you can do easily the bottom-up estimating, and then mostly this is the most accurate one that you have.
For this 3-point estimate,
yep.
I mean, like that optimistic plus pessimistic, and then 4 times the most likely. How did they come up with this formula?
That's called anomaly per chart in this one. It's a very widely used 3-point estimate. So that basically is giving a weightage of optimistic plus pessimistic as 1, and then giving the weightage of most likely to 4, 1:4 ratio, and then they come up with this one. I don't have the history that why it is that one 4, why not 5, why not 2, why not 3. But that's a good point. You can actually read it in that book. You will have all the details given in that one. But this is also one of the things that we use for our 3-point estimate for this. So I normally use the first parametric based on if I have a project where I don't have much knowledge about it technically, then I use historical data. If I have numerical information and multiple people who are a subject matter expert in this one, then we use that 3-point estimate. And when I have the complete work breakdown structure available, then I go with the bottom-up estimate. That's my approach to any of the project that we have. Okay. The fourth one is actually not the estimating technique. It's called reserve analysis. That's analysis is basically your contingency based on your risk factors. So you have a contingency, for example, you can add some additional cost and you can add some additional time, that this is the time or this is the cost that we have that most likely it's going to take. So that you can do a reserve analysis, that how much contingency reserve you want to allocate to this project in terms of cost and time and resources. And that will basically do the reserve analysis for any of the project you do. All right. We're gonna pick up some pace now. I wanted to spend some more time on estimation because that's, I feel, is the most important one when we do the estimation, and that's something that is required for developing a schedule. So now that we have activity sequences, duration available, resource requirement available, resources available, schedule constraints to create a schedule, those are the things that are available as well. So that way you can actually have the basis for your estimation, duration, you have your milestone list. When you have all these details, then all it takes is basically just create a schedule. And tell me, how many of you have experience in working any of the scheduling tool like Microsoft Project or ServiceNow or Smartsheets or anything like that? Anybody has any prior experience in that? Just raise a hand.
I have worked with the Smartsheets.
Okay, good. All right, I see a number of hands that people do have experience in that one. I'll probably at the end of this, not today, but in some other day, I will actually share with you one of my project schedule, the old one, where I can share with you the, actually I'll send you the copy of that one. You can see that how I have scheduled something in the past. That will be an example of one of my old projects. Just use that one as you can. I think mostly I have used both Smartsheets as well as Microsoft Project. I like both of them, and they are really good. So you can easily use it, use that one, and you can schedule all your activities, and you can see the bottom of that how it's giving you an idea that how much time it takes. Somebody has his hands up. Still, any question, or you're just raising your hand that you have used it? You can have your hands down now. Okay. All right. So now that you have all your activities sequenced, defined, estimated, listed, and you have your resources, you can just start using any of those tools and then start putting them in. One of the things that in this one, the tools and techniques, there are two leading things that I want you to focus on. One is the what if scenario and the simulation. So that is basically your data analysis, that when you are doing it, you are assuming so many things, and then you also have to think about some of the things. What if this happens? What if that happens? So that's called what if analysis. And the simulation is the one that you start putting those things and then see if all my assumptions are they are actually correct or not. There are simulation tools available that you can actually use that for data analysis. And the second thing is the agile release planning. Agile release planning is the one we are not going to cover it today. We will cover it in agile processes later on. But agile release planning is the one where we will be looking at, do we need to do what approach we are using, and release planning, can that be done in, we will have a bunch of requirements. They are related to each other mostly. You build them, you put them into the production system, and then you find out another set of requirement and start over again, and then build them as well, and then put them into the production. Whereas in waterfall approach is that you have all your requirements for the whole project done. That may take you 3 months, 4 months, 5 months just to gather the requirement. You do that, and then you do the complete design at once, and then you actually build it, and then you bring it the final system. So there are pros and cons for both of them. We'll cover that one when we discuss the release planning or agile processes in that book. All right. What happens at the end of the project developing schedule is basically you have a schedule baseline. We have project schedule ready, schedule data is available, your project calendars, which means that if there are any meetings or anything, all those things, they are available. Milestones are also listed in your calendars as well. These are the things that are happening. You have any of the change requests, they are coming in or not. So that's also part of this one as output. But change requests are always optional. You may or may not have any change request here. But that's only if you have anything that you identified during your work breakdown structure or sequencing of the activities that you found additional scope that is going to go back and change your baseline for the scope that you already did. And then that's going to have impact on your project cost as well. Okay. Okay, we have about 30 minutes before we go our first break. I think we're good. Cost management planning. So cost is comparatively straightforward. And how do we do the costing? Anybody has any prior experience in doing the costing you want to share? Nobody has done ever any costing of resources or your projects?
I did some during my MBA program, some during some projects, but that was not any professional experience.
Okay, I
can give an example of cost recap. So we do work, we look at raw cost, and we look at gross margins, and we look at ODCs, which is direct costs to our projects, material and things like that. And we add all this together and we put our gross margins on top, and then we create billing rates to become billing. But we're talking costing here, not the revenue side.
Correct. Okay.
I would just add that, usually, there might be a budget sponsor, someone a department where the budget's being allocated from could help define what the overall budget will be for the project.
Yes, that's the budget. That's not cost. So budget and cost are totally different things.
So at one of my previous job, I used to create a scheduling for a large number of people, and in the scheduling program, it gave me the cost per hour for each employee that I scheduled, and it gave me a cost for that 1 week labor cost, and then I compared it across my projected cost or my budgeted cost for that week. And then I made attempts to stay within that budgeted labor cost. So that's something similar to cost management?
Correct. That's called resource costing. So I think I got the answer of both of them. These are the two answers. One is the resource cost, and you gave a very good example. That's exactly how we do. So whenever I have resources, I have my list of resources who are working on this project. So I prepare my costing sheet, and I will share with you the costing sheet that we prepare. And I simply used a very simple Excel sheet for that one as well. You can do it in any of those tools. You can use Smartsheet, you can use Microsoft Project, or you can do an Excel sheet. Just list all your resources in there. Then allocation of each resource per month or per week, that how many hours per month this person is going to be available working on this one. And then you have all their hours total at the end, that how many hours each month or each week that person is going to be working on this project. That will basically give you a breakdown of each month, or let's say if it's smaller project or less duration project, you can do each week. It's a 6 weeks project. You will have all week 1 through 6. Each week, how many hours this person is going to be allocated and working. And let's say the person is only available 30 hours a week, not 40. And you are going to be using that person 30 hours a week, starting from week 1 through 6. So 1800 hours are going to be total spent on this one. Oh, sorry, 180 hours, not 1800, 180 hours for 6 weeks. And 180 hours, now you know, if you know what the cost is for this person. So for example, if the person is charging you $100 an hour, and that would basically give you it means the total cost for that one person is about $18,000. That exactly will give you one person's cost. Same way, if you have 5 resources, 10 resources, you can identify them, the number of hours, and then how many hours and how much time they are spending, what is their cost per hour. That will give you the total number. The things that I'm talking about right now, you don't need to remember all that as well, or if you're not following, because I know it's a little bit complicated. I'll share with you one of my template after this call, and hopefully by next meeting, I would expect you to do some sort of costing with that one, and we'll look into it, what you have done for your own project. But I'll share with you the Excel sheet that for the costing I have done. Main thing what we do need to remember is that we have schedule management plan, risk management plan that you put in. Why we are doing a risk management plan in costing?
Unexpected costs.
Exactly, unanticipated tasks, unexpected cost, or even my estimation can be wrong. I thought that building this one door is going to take 3 hours, and it turned out to be it's an 8 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours. So that basically added additional cost to that. So that's why we have a risk management plan as well, that this should be one of the risks that I need to identify beforehand, and then I need to add some risk factor in there. That's why we are doing reserve analysis earlier that we discussed. So those things have to be added as an input. We are using our data analysis. We are doing our alternate analysis. Alternate analysis is very important. Why it is being emphasized more is this is one of the area that PMBOK is focusing these days. I discussed it during our second lecture, that we have phase gate approach now in any of the state departments. So remember we said that gate 1, gate 2, gate 3, gate 4. Those are the gates, and I think it's alternate analysis in the gate 2. So once you are in the gate 2, you have to do your alternate analysis for any of those. So that you don't just come up with one approach and say, okay, this is the only one. Then you should always do an alternate analysis and say, these are the 3 alternate analyses I have done. Out of these 3, this is the best one. So I just came up with this one. Okay. And then at the end, once we have that, all these things are done, then the output of this one is your cost management plan. Cost management plan is going to give you what is the cost of your project. It is not the budget. So a lot of people confuse cost with budget. What is the difference between the two? Which drive what?
But budgets include profits.
Say that again.
Budgets can include the profits of the project.
Budget may or may not include the profits. We are not talking about the profit here. We are talking about how much budget is allocated for the project. For example, California California high-speed rail, never-ending story. I don't know how many millions or billions have been allocated as budget. What is the cost of that one? Nobody knows yet. But that is happening, right? We know what the budget they have allocated. We don't know what the cost is. And there's no profit included in that one. So the difference between the budget and the cost is, budget is the allocated money that you have or allocated time that you have. that is allocated to the project. Cost is the actual cost. The best way is that you need to have your cost estimation done. And then based on that, you can tell your organization, hey, it's going to cost me $50,000 to build this project. And then they can say, okay, then let me see if I have $50,000 budget allocated anywhere. And then they allow you to use that $50,000 or $60,000. Or they may also say that, yes, I can give you $25,000 this year, this fiscal year, and then the next fiscal year, you're going to get another $25,000. Can you live with this? That's your budget. And in some cases, what they do is that organization will come to you and tell you, I have a budget of about $100,000. Go build this system within that one. And as Faisal Bhai earlier mentioned, that you have to look at everything and you can go back to them and then tell them as a project manager, no, I'm sorry, this is gonna cost me at least $150,000. So your 100,000 budget is not enough for me. Or you can say, yes, I can build you a system within $100,000, but it will have a reduced scope, not the complete scope of that one. An example is the same as we are doing this California high-speed rail. It's gonna be starting from Bakersfield to the LA. There's no benefit for us here in Sacramento. That's another example. That's a reduced scope. So that's the difference between budget and the cost. So don't get confused. When you have questions, they will try to ask you these questions, and sometimes people get confused between budget and the cost as well. All right. We were doing the estimation. I think we discussed this one already, that how do we estimate the cost. So I'm not going to go into the details again, that we are using these estimating techniques, 3-point estimation, bottom-up, parametric, analogous. I have never used analogous, to be honest. We need to read through that one, what that estimation technique is. Then we have to look at it, all these, and then at the end, we have cost estimations available. Now let's go to the budget planning. What exactly are we doing it? It's in aggregating the estimated cost of individual activities or work packages to establish an authorized cost baseline. So remember, I gave you an example. I said that the best way is that you do the estimation. You go back to your organization, your manager, your finance department, and tell them, I have this project. This project is going to cost me $100,000 or $50,000. Can you allocate me $50,000? That is your budget. And then they can say, no, we cannot. We don't have a $50,000 available. Or they may say that we can give you $50,000 this year, and then we can give you $50,000 or 25 now or 25 next year. That is also one of the options. And you have to change your schedule a little bit to factor that in. So that way, based on your budget allocation, you'll have to go back and do it. You have to change it. I remember that working with the fiscal, with the California department, fiscal department. I was working sometime back, and we had a certain budget allocated already. And then when I actually estimated the whole project cost, and I told them that it's not going to happen within this budget. So you either reduce the scope or you increase the budget, but we cannot do both. We cannot live with both of them as is, because the budget is less and the scope of the work is high. So you cannot complete that one within this budget. And that is very, very vital. And project manager has to be really good at estimation and budgeting and costing, so that they can allocate the budget. So that's why one of the key item over here is what? Authorized cost baseline. So your budget is going to be allocated to you once. And then you're going to be working on your project. And then 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, you may come back and tell them that, oh, my budget is not enough. They're going to ask you that, did you not do the costing in the beginning? If you did, why it is that not accurate? then you can tell them that your scope baseline has been changed, or your requirements have changed, or your resource costing has changed. All those things that can change as well. I have a project which I built a project about 3 years ago that I charged them $15,000 for that one. That's a real life example. And they came back to me, sorry, not 3 years ago. There was the proposal was given to them in 2019. So about 5 years ago, we gave them a proposal, and that was based on the rates at that time. We charged them $15,000. They came back to us in 2024 and they said, we need these extra changes in your system now. Tell us how much it's going to cost. This time when I estimated it and the requirement changes were not too many, they were, I would say that's about 30% of the overall project that was the changes that they have. And when I estimated it about $8,000. And they said, why is that? It's like you are charging almost 50, more than 50% of the actual cost of the project. And I said, yes, but the main thing is, why it is 50%? Because the rate has changed. In the last 5 years, the resource that was costing me $50 an hour, now the same resource is costing me $80 an hour. That's the cost that I have. So those are the things that you have to consider when you are actually building this one. Any questions?
It's like a real life example as well I can share is the Folsom School District, Folsom Rancho Cordova School District. I think the cost they mentioned that of building schools back before 2016, like now has doubled actually since 2016. Like now Folsom Ranch, there were like plans back then put in place to build like 3 schools. They built one, and then the cost of building the 2 remaining schools now doubled to about like $500 million.
There you go.
So imagine from 250 million to now $500 million to build them.
Correct.
Can you give some example of some budgeting tools used commonly in PMP?
So we, as I said, that the best way is the same thing as you see over here. I don't know, you can see my cursor moving here or not? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So if you look at it, this cost estimate, that's the one that we have. So cost estimate we use. So I use even for my budgeting as well, I use the same thing as a smart sheet or a Microsoft project. So I go with the bottom up on this one. I do the costing as a project manager, and then I go take that cost and then I add some risk factor into that on top of it. And then let's say, depending upon how much is unknown activities are there, based on that, I define what is that a 10% risk or 20% of the risk factor I have to add. And then I take it to my senior management and tell them that its actual cost is this much, and with the risk factor and everything, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars. So you don't have to use a separate tool for that one. There are a number of tools available. I can do some research and tell you later on that what those tools are. But mostly, if you have done your cost estimation in Smartsheet or Microsoft Project or anything, you can use the same. Just take that one, add it to your Excel sheet, saying this is how much it is. One of the tools that I built myself. This is like in an Excel sheet. I'll share that with you. You can just plug in your names and rate and hours, and it will tell you exactly how much it is. That's the real life I have used for when we built the California DMV system. There was only for one particular module. For that one, I built that one, and I can share that with you.
Gulbay, another follow-up on how does this work if it's a volunteer effort? Do we have to worry about the like a labor cost or some of the other?
You still have to think about it. So if all you do is you still have to look at everything else except that only in that Excel sheet that I'll share with you. If you have the cost per hour is 0, you just put that one as cost per hour is 0. That will basically still tell you how many hours each person is required for each week or each month. And at the end, the cost for that person is zero. There you might have volunteer work, but then you might have half of your people are volunteer work, but you have 3 employees still working. An example is that in the MCF, you have some of the employees who are working and getting paid, and most of the people are working on a volunteer base. So for your resources, your estimation, you put all of them in there. Only the ones that are paid, you put their actual rate, and the ones who are not paid, they are on a volunteer basis, they are working, just put their cost at zero. So you will still have their hours and everything in there, but the cost is not going to be translated into dollars for them.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yep.
How about the infrastructure or software or hardware or anything that is related? Where do we account that for?
Very good question. That's exactly the other part of it. So I'll give you one example. We were building this California DMV system that I'll share with you, the costing sheet. So there are two aspects for that. One was that building the software. That was about $55 million. And the total cost for the whole project was about $95 million. So we had about $40 million of worth of actually not the services, but the hardware and the infrastructure. So the hardware and the infrastructure itself was costing that much. So in your budgeting tool, you have to add all of them. You have to have your resource cost, which is your manpower cost. So for services, then you have to have your other costs as well, which is the hardware, other softwares you are buying. You have to have your excuse me. You have to have your the cost of any of the infrastructure servers you are buying, anything that you're buying new, or it could be as simple as buying a furniture for your office. That could be added to your budget as well. That has to be added to your cost, and that would be your budget. So as a project manager, that is your responsibility to make sure that you counted all of them in there. That's why expert judgment is very, very important here. And not necessarily you have to be an expert in everything, but you need to find out who is the expert, and you have to bring in those people to do the proper estimation for you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
What sort of tool can you use or method can you use to amortize other larger costs that are split over multiple projects?
Okay, can you elaborate your question? Tools, there are a number of, I earlier mentioned that the tools for estimation, I use in Excel. I have built one of my own Excel sheet that actually does all the calculations, or you can use your even other estimation tools, for example, Smartsheet or Microsoft Project. You do that. So those are the tools that you can use it. There are a number of other tools as well. ServiceNow has a very comprehensive ERP process defined in there. You can use that as a tool as well. A lot of organizations are using it. It's not necessarily only for the software, but also in hardware, infrastructure, buildings. It is being used over there as well. So you can use any of those tools that have. But then you can do the budgeting is basically based on your actual cost, the estimation, plus some of the risk factor that you have to add. And then that you have to add into that one, and then that would be your budget. Okay.
You're always continuously checking your cost management plan with your budget plan, right? To make sure that you're not falling out. And
you are, and I will share with you that I always have a plan versus actual cost every month. And when I get an invoice from my vendors, so one of my own main responsibility working with the county is that we have multiple vendors who are providing us the services, and they are charging us. They are sending me the invoices. And no invoice is paid until I look at that. I take that invoice, I plug in those numbers into my Excel sheet, and I look at it, that plan versus actual, and I see that are we still within budget? Are we over? Are we under? And if there is any red flag over there, I raise that red flag right there. So I do some estimation, and I do adjustment into my estimation as well, that how many hours, how much cost is gonna occur for. So there are number of types of the cost that you have for any project. You have your variable cost, that is gonna be every week, every month that you're gonna get. Your utility bills, those are your sorry, let's go take the utility bills later on. Your variable cost is that, for example, your resource cost. Every week you are getting it. That's your one of them. You have your fixed cost. For example, every month you have to pay the rent. That is very fixed. You know that exactly how much it's going to cost me. That is your fixed cost. And you have any other software. You have, for example, any of you are using any software subscription, Microsoft Office you're using. There's a $10 per month or something that you're paying for that. You know it's fixed cost. That is going to go in that one as well. And then you have operational cost. For example, you have utility bills. That's your operational cost. You have to have a coffee in your office. That's your operational cost. You have any other things that are just to run your day-to-day operation of your office or of your project. That is your operational cost. So in order to run that project, how much it's going to cost every month? That is your operational cost. So you have to add all those costs in there to allocate that budget, and then extrapolate it to make sure that if it's a 5-year long project, you say in the next 5 years, this is how much it's going to cost me total. And this is the breakdown for each month, each year. That for year 1, it's going to be this much, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. So you have to have all your years defined in that one.
One data point I just want to add for the IT services, that's a yearly plan, like for example, you give an example or office, right? Any tool, for example, we are on Zoom. Let's say all these 30 people here in the organization who are on the call, they all need the license. In this particular case, since you are using the license, it's a different issue. But if you want a recurring, then once it goes out of our project, it's just like a recurring cost to the organization. And then there is a yearly negotiation around that. And in that case, I think more than project manager, the service owner comes into picture, where he looks at it. If it is being charged and they are getting paid on a recurring basis, and if they add any additional features or functionalities, then negotiation happen between the service owners as well as maybe the costing team around in the organization. I'm just adding this data point because in that does not come in the project budget planning, maybe except after year 1 or maybe post budget, right? So maybe it can be in the closing docs or somewhere that this will be in the operations of the regular IT services.
Correct. And that's going to be in your operations. And then you will have that cost added for the duration of the project. But once your project is over, you can say now as an output of this one, we have this project is done, and then we have this operational cost, additional operational cost for this. Even the project is terminated, still that the additional services you have budgeted or you have actually subscribed, that cost is going to be recurring cost until you actually terminate that service as well. An example is that you are paying for QuickBooks for your financial planning, right? It's a $35 per month that you're paying for that one. So you can say that for the duration of the project for financial planning, I'm using QuickBooks. But once the project is over, QuickBooks is going to continue to charge you $35 until you go back and then say, okay, I don't need your subscription anymore. I want to cancel that one. So that's going to be a cost that you have to bear. Or you can tell as a project manager, this is my project cost. And then after that, it's basically at the finance level, at the program level, or even at the portfolio level, they have to think about it that yes, the project cost is this much, but then there's a recurring cost that is going to add more budget. We need to have more budget at the program level or at the portfolio level. Okay. All right, it's 4 o'clock, almost 4 o'clock. We are gonna go for Asar, inshallah, and we will continue on this from next one, from budget onward, and in at around 4:15. Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We're gonna just pause.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So we stay just in the call and resume, not that.
Yeah, you can just stay on the call and resume. We'll just resume as soon as
sure.
4:15 when we come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed. What time were you meeting back?
4:15.
4:15. All right. Thank you.
All right. I think we have most of the people back now. I hope so.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started again. Okay, while we were on the break, I actually tried to look for something that I can share as well. It's kind of a one of our proprietary tool that we built. I may not be able to send it to you, but I can share that with you so that you can have some idea exactly how we do the costing. So I had to do some cleanup as well. That's why it took me a couple of extra minutes. So I apologize for that. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Can see it. Yes.
Okay. So we were going over the costing, and I just wanted to share with you. This is one of the tools that I used. I intentionally just removed the name of all the resources because that's not the information I can share publicly. But this is one of my projects. So if you see this one, this is my we call it a staffing model that I have. I have the list of all the resources. Their names should be listed here. So you will have all the resources. Their names should be listed here. We have their roles, which team they are actually belong to, and if you just want to go any of there are comments and anything over here, we did that one. And then the main thing is it's here. This was a multi-million-dollar and multi-year project that we have. Starting from September 2020 onward, we started allocating that how many what percentage of their time is going to be allocated for the project. So if you look at it, I have all these people listed here with their roles, but I have only from September, October, November, only one person is, and one means 100%. And I'll show you how I did the calculation on that 100%. But this is for example, the project manager is going to be allocated 100% for this project. But the other person, the very next person that we came into the project is this one, which was a senior programmer starting in November. For the first 2 months, the project manager was the only one. Then we have this senior programmer joining the project. Then we had this person. By the time this was in January, we did not have a need for this person that much. Only 0.05% of the time was required. We had, on the other hand, we have this person who was joining in January, but that person was allocated 104%, which means we needed this person to spend extra time on this one here. So that's how we calculated that, how much time of each person is required. You see that I have some of the people who are only 75% of the time they are allocated. We had, so this was 2020, 2021, then we have 2022. And then at the end, I just calculated that how many months we had, summed it up. How many hours is that? Right now we were going only with the 160 hours per month. So based on that, we did the calculation that how many hours each person is going to be working. So this is the total in 3 years, in 2022, that how many hours each person is going to be working. By the time we reached here, these are the total number of hours that we needed this person for total. But we had this every month we did the calculation that how many resources. So we had about 69, for example, the total number of hours that months that we needed this person was how many. So that basically tells me that how many bodies are needed, how many people are needed for this project. And you see that we have starting low, then ramping up, and then ramping down. Then we also looked at that one, the total number of hours, total, this, or what we call it a person hours, or we used to call it a man hours, is 137,694 hours total. That was the massive big 3-year total number of hours were needed. We had this one, and then we divided it into our groups. So we had group 1, group 2, group 3. So each group has, because there were some tasks, and you don't need to worry about the groups, because these were the tasks divided, that what percentage of the time is required for each group to be basically this is the work breakdown structure. So we just kept on adding and decomposing it into multiple groups, that how many groups are going to be required for each. And this is, if you look at it, that every month I started looking at it, that who is going to be working at what level. We started adding it here, and at the end, when I have we called it a workstream 5, WS5 forecast summary. So that's what we had. So this is the staffing summary that we have for each month total. And when I actually added the hours, the dollars with this one, whatever is the dollar amount for each one of those, we calculated, and here is the total amount that we were getting at the end. So the pricing summary is that we had about $13 million total to be paid for this. You don't need to really worry about that, how this number is coming up from, because this is all the built-in formulas I used. But if you are good savvy in Excel sheet, you can actually build it your own as well. So I looked at it. If you look at it here, we have the different rates for every year. We had 2010, 2011 rates for this role. We have 2010, 2011 rates for this. So these are the different rates that we had available. And so I just wanted to show you, this was my overall pricing model. We have, it looks very complicated, but that's why I don't want you to get confused in that one, because it is complicated and it took me many months to prepare this one. So you won't be able to understand everything within like 15 minutes on this one. And then here is the costing for this. That was the pricing, that how much we are charging and all that. This was the costing for each one of those employees. What is the cost for every month that we had? So if you go here, this is the cost for each. This is the rate per hour. So Faisal, you mentioned that you had a rate defined. We had rate for each person defined, that what is the rate for this. We have the rate for each category. And then within the category as well, sometimes the rate is different. So we were defining that one. That was giving me the costing model. So if you look at it here, I just wanted to show you total. It's about 7.1 million we had, the total cost that we had. I added some contingency to this one as well. So when we added the contingency, it was this is the 717, which means about 10% of the contingency we added here. And then we added some additional costs, for example, other costs we added, that was traveling cost and other stuff. And then we have a staff retention cost as well. Bonuses we have to give people to people as well. That was in addition to that one. This was about close to $40,000. This is a $60,000 we had to pay extra as well. 7.9 million, close to $8 million that we had to pay. That was our costing model. And if you look at,
can you give an example of a contingency here? What's the contingency includes?
Contingency is that what exactly do you need to pay for extra? For example, you have a project that is at risk, so there is a there are a lot of risk factors. So you add that what is going to be your contingency factor, which means that how many your I'll give you the example of my own project. In my project, we had one of the very biggest risk was we have a very specific skill set required for some of the business analysts who has knowledge about a very old programming system. That programming was that the system was built before I was born. So that was that old system. We even had to go back and find those people who had the knowledge with, of working with what we call it a EDL, event driven language. That was the old DMV system that was built on based on that. And we said that, okay, so how do we find these people? Where do we find these people? So in order for us to find these people, we had to find those staffing companies who can actually go back and find those, because most of them are either, most of the people, those people having that skill were not even working anymore. So they were not in the industry available. So we had to go back, find out those people. So there was like additional risk factor for us that what if we have to pay extra for that? So some of them, they may say that, no, I'm retired, I don't want to work anymore. So what do we do then? We give them incentive. We give them extra bonuses. Say, okay, if you can come in and we can give you this is as a signing bonus so that you can start working on this one. That was one of the things that we had. We had certain servers and certain systems that were very mission critical applications, and we were not sure if those systems are gonna be. We needed extra insurance for that one as well, in case that those systems go down. Then what's gonna be the impact? So that additional insurance was also one of our contingency. So that the whole thing we added it about close to a $1 million quarter, $750,000 we had to pay for that. So that was the contingency we added to the project. So as a project manager, that was my responsibility to factor in all those unknown factors as well. Plus,
can the contingency be, Mr. Gold, can the contingency be determined from the risks of the project itself?
That risk is one factor. Then there are other things as well. The contingency, we also put it for unanticipated tasks. So for example, you are working on a certain project. I'll give you example of at MCF, they were just renovating the MPR, and then they found there was mold in there. That was not in the original requirement. When they were gonna start working on that one, there was not probably on their radar screen that there might be a mold in there as well. So that was an unanticipated task that they had to take care of that part as well. So there was an unanticipated task. They added another 10% to that one. So that's, yes, risk is one of the thing, and then those unanticipated tasks that you that may come up. So you just do some based on your prior historical knowledge. You can add some contingency to that one. There is no hard and fast rule for this one. You can do some estimation for that one and say, okay, 10% is your contingency, 20% is your contingency based on the uncertainties you have for the project.
Typically, you do the time contingency as well, and if so, how much you typically do?
I do all the time contingency, and I normally my time estimation, since I do mostly the bottom up. If I have done the work breakdown structure for everything, then I'll say about between 5 to 6% of the time contingency. If I did not do a bottom up estimation for the time, and I did everything based off of just a very high level requirement, then I would go from between 10 to 15% of the time estimation.
And typically your projects are how long when you say time condition? So if it's a year, then you do like a 1 or 2 months or something like that.
That's a good point. So if you have a longer term projects, your time contingency is going to be higher. If you have a short term projects, then your time contingency is going to be much smaller. The reason is you can anticipate a lot of things. So for example, if you have a project that you are working on and then that's only a 3 months long project, then you can say that, okay, for the next 3 months, I can foresee these things. But if you have a 5-year long project, you don't know how many factors are going to be impacted in the next 5 years. That might change a lot of things there. That's why we have to look at it.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. So this is just one of the pricing model I wanted to share with you, that if you have that one, if you look at it, we actually did the whole profit margin as well, that how much total revenue we are getting, how much is the cost for this, we 7.9 million that we did. What is the we have about $5 million, that was our profit. What is our profit margin? And then we did a lot of financial overview was this, when I do my project, I do all those things as well. But depending upon, as a project manager, if that's your responsibility, then you have to do it. Otherwise, not necessarily all the time you are required to do. So for each one of those groups, for example, I had these groups, group 1, group 2, group 3. Remember, we were looking into it. How long is going to be group 1, then group 2, group 3. We did this high level.
What is WS stand for?
What's that? WS is
WS.
That's work stream. That's the name of the project.
I see.
Then I have for each one of those groups as well, we did the task and then their estimation as well, that how much it's going to cost for each one of those tasks that we have. And then we also did the pricing by groups, that for each group, because there are tasks within that group as well. So we did that, how much is each group that is going to cost us. So it's very complicated. You don't necessarily need to understand all that here. What I'm saying, and this is just for the example, just to show you the flavor of what the project manager is doing. So if you think that the project manager does not do anything, that's the thing, that you, as a project manager, you are responsible for all of these things that you're doing. Got it? Okay, let's gonna go back to our original slide deck so that we can keep the ball rolling over there. Okay, we were on the budget. So we have the budget, we defined the budget, and now we can actually go to the next one. But let me, okay, good. I was able to. The next one is a quality management plan. So one of the things that you have to think about is what exactly are we doing in terms of our quality management? Are we actually identifying the quality requirements, standards? What are the different deliverables that as a quality we are doing it? And then how the project will demonstrate compliance with the quality requirements and standards. So you have a lot of compliance requirement. You will have a lot of standards that are there as well, depending upon what type of project you're doing. That basically gives you the guidance and the direction of how the quality will be managed and verified throughout the project. The main key over here is that not only just the management of that, but also validation and verification. We use this word very commonly, validation and verification. Anybody can give me an example of what's the difference between the validation and verification? Okay.
Verification is done through the through the testing methodology, different kind of tests, right? So verification is by, testing, and I think validation can be done by just observation.
So verification is by the testing team, as you mentioned, that's right. Validation normally is done by the stakeholders, by the end users. That's the main difference. So you have heard of this term called UAT, user acceptance testing. That's your validation. And the quality assurance, that is your verification. So you're doing your verification and the validation both. So you do first the verification and make sure everything is working right, and then you do the validation after that. So that's the difference between the two we have. Okay, so over here, if you look at it, we have the project plan, risk management plan, stakeholder engagement plan. Scope baseline is very important, but at the same time, requirement is important. That's requirement traceability matrix. We said requirements documentation. That is another document that we have. And then we have all these are the inputs to this. We use the quality. What is the way, how are we going to verify or verify that this everything is perfectly fine? So in that one, we use brainstorming and we do benchmarking. So for example, you have hardware infrastructure, you have a requirement of that your server should be responsive, and this let's say 5 millisecond is the response time for every inquiry that you get. Are you meeting that 5 millisecond, or are you going to 6 millisecond or 7 millisecond? If that's the case, then that test failed. And if the test does not fail, and it does with under 5 millisecond, then yes, the test has passed. So you write test cases for each one of those requirements, and make sure that in your traceability matrix you have all of them listed down. You use that one. You look at what is the different criteria for your decision making. How do you represent the data over there? What is your logical data model? How the data is flowing from one process to another process? And then you do those matrix diagrams, just like I mentioned earlier in our traceability matrix as well. Then you do the test and inspection of that how many test cases are going to be there total that you will be using, who is going to be testing it, how many resources will be required to do the testing. And then when you actually do the test, you pass, fail, what are the requirements for your testing as well. Because some of the things that are called control testing, some of those called uncontrolled testing. Control testing is, for example, when you have a system but it's not live, so you don't know whether when the system goes live it can handle the pressure of all those X number of users using it. A very simple example is, anybody has used a DMV system for your driver license registration or anything? Just imagine that how many users are there for that system. And what if their server is not able to handle these, or like say, we have about 40 million, 45 million plus people in California. And what if there are about 1 million people are accessing that system at any given time? Is our server capable of handling 1 million users at the same time or not, out of those 40? If not, then so those are the things that we need to look at it, that whether we have our requirement, the quality requirement is actually meeting those quality standards or not. And then once we have this one, we have our quality metrics, we have quality management plan ready for that one. We have our risk management plan that's going to be updated. If there is anything that in the quality management plan we found, or we are writing a test case and we're saying that, oh, this has a certain requirements, and that was not in our scope document or requirement document, we have to go back and update that. We will update that as well. So that's why the quality management plan has to be engaged right in the beginning of the project, so that as we are gathering the requirement, we're also writing the test cases for them right away. Okay. Now, our favorite that we were talking about earlier, resource management. I think we talked about this one in very detail, that what are the different resource management plans we have. We use our scope, we use our requirements, we do use our quality management plan as well. Based on that, we will decide how many testers are required, how many developers are required, how many designers we need, how many people are we need who are the subject matter expert for this one. And there are any additional resources that are not human resources. For example, do we have a requirement of having a high-speed internet? That's one of the resources that you need. Do you have a requirement of procuring any kind of other hardware? You want to buy 2 or 3 servers for this one, or computers, new computers? Do you need to buy a furniture for this? All these are the different resources. So you have to think about these resources. What are the things that are needed based on your WBS and based on your scope of the work and the requirements? Then you list down, you use the data representation and see that what are the roles and responsibilities for each one of these resources, and based on that you can decide that how many resources are needed. As an output of this one, you will have resource management plan, you will have a team charter, which means that how many teams, if you have one full big team that is going to be there, and your team charter, which means that team is going to tell you exactly what that team is going to be doing for each. Within a big team, you will have, within a big project team, you will have sub teams. Like I showed you the example of group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. So those are the groups. I divided my teams into team into 5 groups, and then each group has their own roles and responsibilities within that one. So they were all working in sometime in parallel, sometime in sequence with each other, but they were all working on different tasks. Okay, any question? All right, the next one is communication plan. Main thing that is developing an appropriate approach and plan for project communication activities based on the information needs for each stakeholders. Now, that is something we have to make sure that people who are actually related to this project, they are well informed, and it is documented that how are we going to be informing them. Are we going to have a meeting? Do we have weekly status meetings, monthly status meetings as well? I shared with you earlier the RACI chart. Remember, we have responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. How do we consult? How do we inform? We actually communicate with them, and that's where we would do. What is the technology that we're going to be using for that? Are we going to use Microsoft Teams? Are we going to communicate in person in the office meetings? Do we have a regular weekly, monthly steering or bi-monthly steering committee meetings, or it's going to be all whenever I send out an email, everyone has to just respond? So those are all things that needs to be considered for our communication model. Did I share with you yesterday a copy of my communication model? Yesterday, did anybody have a look at the attachments I sent out? I think I did share a communication plan as well, one of the sample of that. You can use that one as one of your communication management plan. Okay.
Yeah, yes, you included that yesterday in the email.
Okay, good. So you have it. All right, good. So if you have any questions on that one, we can definitely talk about it in our next meeting. But this is also another thing that I want you, when you are working on your project, think about all these tools that I have provided you. Use these tools to build your project plan for that one. Right. The next one is risk management plan. This is very, very important. A lot of projects actually ignore this part. And when you ignore this one, there are actually a lot of risks that are coming up, and then you probably don't even know that those risks are there, or you haven't accounted them for. And then That is the bigger issue, that when you actually miss any of those risks and then those risks occur and they become an issue, that will impact your project really bad. So how to conduct the risk management activities for a project, that's what you define in our risk management plan. I gave you an example yesterday. Can anybody remind me what was the example I gave for risk management? Nobody remembers that? Or so I told you that we have our monthly risk management meetings. In that one, we do risk management meetings. We identify that whatever the risks have been identified in the last 1 month, we discuss that risk. We discuss the potential mitigation strategy for that. And then we identify that one, whether that is a risk. What is the weightage of this one? Is that a high level risk? It's a low level risk. It's a risk that is the probability of occurring of that risk is very high, low, or medium. So those are the things that we actually do that. So in risk management, all we do is we pretty much use the complete everything that we have covered so far in our project management plan. We look at all those components. We look at the risk register as well, and the documentation and any of the one of the things that is not mentioned in our inputs, and that is called non-functional requirements. And non-functional requirements are, you will see that term a lot between functional requirements and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements are your requirements, what the features your product or project should do. Non-functional requirements are your constraints. So any of the constraints you mentioned, for example, I gave you an example of that if everyone in California, or at least 1 million people in California, are going to access the DMV's website, is our DMV website is going to crash or not? So that's one of the non-functional requirements that you have, that can California DMV system can handle at least 1 million concurrent users or not? That's one of the that could be one of the requirement. It could be others as well, but this is one example of that one. And then the output of this one is that we have a complete risk management plan that we have, where we define how we're going to manage the risk, who's going to be responsible for that, and what documents are we preparing for that one. So that's our risk management plan. The key factor over here is that how are we identifying the risks? Anybody has any idea? All right, so this is the process of identification of the risks that we have. So the process of identifying individual project risks, sources of overall project risk, and documenting their characteristics, that is basically the process of identification of the risk. The benefit of this one is that we know the existing individual project risks. So when we say existing project risks, which means that they have not occurred yet, but they are known to each other. We all know that. What are the overall source of those project risks that we have? And then there is risk information for the project team to respond to. That what exactly are we going to do for these risks? If you look at the input and output of this one, it's very simple, that we pretty much use all the project plan, all that the plans that we prepared. We use all the documents that we have prepared so far. Based on that, we will identify those risks. We also use our agreements. For example, if we have a budget constraint, we have any other, we have a certain conditions in our budget or in our timeline, that if the project is not completed within this time frame, there's going to be additional penalty or something. That is also a risk. So we have to add that one to the risk as well. And what we do is that we use our, again, the checklist, interviews, brainstorming, and we do the SWOT analysis. Does anybody have any idea what SWOT analysis is? SWOT analysis is called...
Yes, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
So we do the SWOT analysis. So any kind of a project, any kind of risk, we do the SWOT analysis for all the requirements. whether we have, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities that we have that we can improve, and what are the threats to the project. So we do the complete SWOT analysis. We also look at different type of the risk and do the root cause analysis for that one. What is the root cause for each one of those risks? And that is, a lot of them are based on assumptions and constraints. So what are the different type of assumptions we are creating? That's one. And for this one, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have a proper tool available. I have, I think, shared that one as well yesterday, a template for this. You can use that for your identification of the risk and who's going to be working on what risk. That tool is very handy. That's an Excel sheet that you can use that one. And the result of this one is that you will create a risk register that I shared, that one of that template with you. You have risk management plan that we prepared earlier, but we have a risk report for each one of the identified risks. What is the report that currently, what's the current status of that one? We have, again, the risks and issues log that's going to be updated as well. So if there are additional risks being identified, you just need to identify them and then have the plan ready. So whatever we have covered so far in the risk, there is one key aspect that we have not covered yet. Can anybody tell me what it is? Is everyone sleeping? That's the problem of having a remote. Might be a lot of people are sleeping. Okay, I'll tell you. It's called okay. That's called the mitigation strategy, commonly known. So any of the risks that have been identified, first of all, identification of the risk, the more risk you identify, it's not a bad thing for the project. It's actually a good thing for the project. Same thing, just like if your testing team is finding defects in your project, it's actually a good thing for the project, not bad. Because then it means that they are doing their job. Their job is to find to break your system. Whatever the project, whatever the system you are building, their job is to break that system. And if they are successfully able to break it, that means your testing strategy is working. Same thing, if you identify more and more risks, that means your risk management plan is working. What you need to do is, for each one of those risks that you identify, you have to have a mitigation strategy for that. You have to have a response to that one. What are the different type of mitigation strategies people can have? Any idea?
More resources.
Well, that's if you have a resource risk.
Yeah, basically for us, mostly depends on the severity of the problems. If there are some issues that you cannot deal with, then we remove those certain features, or it could be that, hey, there is going to be some schedule impact or things like that. I mean, depends on the situation.
Correct. So the mitigation strategies are, I'll tell you what different type of mitigation strategy. One is that you have a response to a risk, which means that if this happens, this is what we're going to be doing. Like I gave you example that if we have a too much rain in the city of Folsom, do we have a mitigation strategy ready or not? Do we have a drainage system ready to have this kind of rain or not? Those are the strategies, the mitigation or a risk response that we have. I used to work for Folsom Fire Department as a volunteer with a team called CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. And that was one of the mitigation strategy, that we will have the volunteers, a big force of volunteers who are going to be working. That is not an additional cost to the city because they are volunteers, but they are going to be very well effective resources or tools in case of an emergency, which could be any kind of emergency. It could be a fire, it could be road issues, accident, It could be a rain issue or any kind of those issues. We have been deployed on so many. Folsom Rodeo was pretty much most of the time was completely controlled by us. We were providing all the medical services for that as a first responder. So we have all those kind of different type of mitigation strategies you can have. So you have a response to the risk. That is one of the mitigation strategy. Another strategy could be, which is actually not a mitigation strategy. That is, if sometime you say that if there is a risk of certain thing that is happening, and if that happens, there is absolutely nothing we can do. We will just accept it as is. And whatever are the consequences of that one, we have to be ready for those consequences. For example, you can say if there is a very big flood or something that comes up over here, or then there is absolutely nothing we can do, and all we can do is that we will be just accepting it, and whatever is the damage to the city or to the buildings and all that as well, we have to do the assessment later on and then bear the cost for that. That's it. There's nothing.
So you can transfer the risk in that case, right? You can transfer to insurance or something like that.
Yeah, and that's what the insurance companies do. The insurance companies actually do their own risk analysis, and they actually say that. That's why you have noticed that the city of Natomas has a big flood insurance cost that we don't have it here in Folsom because of the terrain that we have. So if you are buying a house in Natomas, be ready for a big bill from the insurance company as flood insurance. That's but we don't have it here in Folsom. So that's one of the risks that we have. So you just accept that risk as is, and then you don't have any mitigation strategy for that, because that's something that is if that happens, you don't have any control over that one. That's the main thing. So those are the things that you do. So that's how you prepare a risk plan. So in that one, what we do, sometimes you come up with some change requests. So for example, you say that as part of my mitigation strategy, I need to have some extra resources, or that's going to change your resource plan. That's going to change your cost plan, because you have to have extra resources. Each resource is going to cost you much. So that's going to have that one. It may have your quality management plan as well change. So those are all the different types of the different things. It may also require you to buy something extra. For example, how many of you still have a spare tire in your car? That's your risk response, because you have a spare tire in your car. In case there's a flat tire, you have to have a spare tire, or you have to have the jack and everything that actually gonna just you can use to change your tire as well. That's another, basically that's risk identification, and that risk response for that. And then there is an extra cost associated with that one, and that is that you have to buy an extra tire that's going to be sitting over there, and it's going to occupy some space in your car as well, and the weight. So all those things are going to be the additional cost for that. So just remember that all those things are going to be there, and that will keep on adding or updating your risk and issues register that you have. Okay. All right. I think this is one of the last one that we have.
I have a question on risks and mitigation. What is the residual risk? Is that something we need to think about, or once we plan for the risk and we have the responses, that's the extent of what we need to know in the exam?
So there are different types of risks that we have. You have resource risk, you have a residual risk, which means that we have one risk that is already there. If we take that strategy, and then we have a certain type of mitigation strategy, but in that, using that certain mitigation strategy, you will have some additional risk introduced into that one. So those are the residual risks that we have.
Okay.
So that's basically that risk was not there, but if you use a certain mitigation strategy, in that case, it's gonna happen.
It might introduce another risk.
Another risk.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which is sometimes it's perfectly okay. You can actually mitigate the bigger risk and have a mitigation strategy that can introduce a smaller risk. So that is perfectly okay. You're just reducing the intensity of the risks that you have. Okay.
And do we keep in a project management world, do we keep the risks mitigation costs as an overall cost to the project, or we keep it as part of contingencies? Are those two different buckets of where we keep that money?
You saw me in one of my example that I shared with you is I have the actual cost and then I have a contingency. So you can have the two type of contingency. You can have a cost to every single risk response, or you have an overall contingency for the risks. You can have both of them.
Okay, thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. All right, the next one is the procurement. So remember we talked about buying additional stuff, building, buying furniture, buying your additional equipment. Sometimes you have to buy a building to do something, some tasks as well. So that's basically all comes under the procurement management plan. So basically, this process is documenting procurement decisions. What are the things that you need to procure? Specifying the approach, what different types of approach you're using for procurement, and potential sellers. Who are your vendors that you're using? And this will determine whether to acquire goods or services from outside the project, what to acquire, how and when to acquire. Those are all the decisions that you have to make. And goods and services may be procured from other parts of the performing organization, which means that within the same organization, you have other people who are actually organizations who are already using that, or they have those resources. You just need to procure it from them. It may or may not include cost. So that will be an easier part. One example is every single department in the government organizations, they sometimes they have their own budget available for certain procurement, but then they have every single one of them, they would need IT services. So what happens that they can reach out to the IT department and ask them, do you have these, can you provide me these kind of services? That's within the organization. You don't have to go outside and procure the IT services for that. So those are the different types of services that you can use to actually within the organization, or sometimes you don't have that solution available within the organization, then you can go outside the organization and buy that. So inputs are pretty much all the project documents that we have, and based on that, we will decide whether we need to procure anything new or not. And what tools we use is we do the market research. For example, we need a certain type of solution, and we do the market research and find out what is the best solution for this one and where it is available. And make or buy analysis, which means that do we need to actually build it in-house, or do we need to just buy it from outside? Is it more feasible to actually build something in-house? I gave you an example. I used an Excel sheet that actually I prepared it in-house versus using some sort of additional tool that would take care of all these needs from outside, and I can pay for that one. So that was the decision at that time, but I decided to actually build it myself because that was easier and that was more customizable for me to do it. So that's why we did it. As an output of this one is there could be that you need to have a procurement strategy. In that procurement strategy may include that you have to send out a bid, or you can just ask your friend, hey, do you know anyone who's selling this thing or this kind of services? And your friend give you a recommendation and you go with that one. But that normally does not work in the especially in the government work, but also in any of the organizational work. That may work well when you have to buy or procure something for your home, but not for your organization. So you need to have, for example, a bidding process. You need to document the bid, and then you have to prepare like procurement statement of work that you have to prepare. You do define what is your selection criteria for the bidders, and then you make that decision whether you need to build still. Can you build it, or can you just do these things? That decision that you have to do. And then you actually send it out and you say that, okay, this is a bidding process. I'm going to actually send it out. I'll invite the offers. People will send you their proposals. You evaluate them, interview them, and then you make a call whether you need to use them or not. Okay, so that's your the whole bidding process that you have. Any question on this? No questions? That's actually pretty good. I don't know, people, after Asar, there was, I know we are almost at the Maghrib time, but so today, this is this was the last process that we have for our planning. So congratulations, we just finished the planning module, which means that we are pretty much for the majority of all the processes we have already done. The only next part which is done is, well, we have the three process groups are left. We have execution, and we have monitoring and controlling, and then the last one is the closing. So these are the three major process groups are left, but the bigger ones are execution and monitoring and controlling. But the biggest one was this one as a project planning. We just finished that one, and what we need to do is in your projects. I want to talk about a little bit on your projects. That my expectation is that next week when we are meeting, actually we still have about, technically we still have about another 45 minutes of the time left. I want to give that time back to you so that you can actually take that time, and now that the tools that we have used and the plans that we discussed today, you use those plans and then do the complete project planning for that. And next week, when you come back, I'm expecting that we will spend about 30 minutes or so in your projects, where you should be just briefly presenting what's going to be your project, and what are the different type of project plans that you have built so far. And I don't expect that you will have a complete 100% accurate or perfect project plan, but at least every one of your group should have a project plan document that should be prepared. I shared with you the templates. If you can, you need more templates as well, I can share this, look into it, and then I can provide you some more as well. But these are the templates that you can use to kickstart your project. Any questions?
Gulwik, quick question. So when you do the project planning, right? In the planning, you have all these, processes. Do all this process needs to be developed, or how do you decide, right, which process is applicable for your project and probably which you don't? Or is it
processes, if you look at it, pretty much every process is applicable to any project. The only thing is that how do you tailor the project itself? For example, we talked about there are different type of tools and techniques, estimation techniques, for example. There are like 4 or 5 different types of estimation techniques. You can use just one of them. You don't have to use all those tools and techniques. For inputs, some of the inputs you will be looking into it, but some of those cases you don't have any inputs. For example, when you are actually preparing a project charter and then you are doing your scope management at that time, you may not have a change control at that time, because there was no changes at that time that was required. change control is actually going to come in when we do monitoring and execution and controlling. That's where we're going to be discussing what the change control is. But you don't have that any changes to your project yet, so you don't need to go over that one specific input. But as far as the process is concerned, you have to go through that one. You have to have a scope, you have to have a charter scope requirement, then you have to have design your schedule, you have to have your estimation done, you have to divide it everything into your work breakdown structure, you have to identify the activities, you have to estimate each one of those activities, then you have to schedule all that, you have to identify who are the resources, then you need to look at each one of those resources, that what is their availability, and then you have to sequence them properly, all these activities, and then put them in the project schedule, and then you can use that sequence to prepare a project plan that is going to be required for you. Okay, so the only way you can do, you probably need every single process, but you don't have to have a separate document for each one of some of those processes are going to be just one-page document that you will do.
Okay, I get it. And can you also send the other process? I mean, you send us, but if you have any templates for other process, just as a reference, we can,
Yeah, I will see if any of those you don't have it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just put them into a folder, and I'll start putting them into that folder and share that folder with you guys so that you can all have that.
Thank you.
Also, I have shared those books as well. If you have did not access it yet, you can just send me a request and you will get access to that if you still are looking for those books that you don't have. Okay.
One thing, excuse me, in regards to both, I received 2 books, but the third one, let me see on the folder. I haven't found that third book.
So you're talking about the PMBOK. The PMBOK,
Yes,
I did not
exactly.
share it yet. PMBOK, I did not share it, but the rest of the 2, I did share that.
Okay, yeah, the 2 I got it, but the third one, maybe it will be a big file or something.
Yeah, these 2, at least you should have it. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other question? All right. So we're gonna end our session today now because it's almost Maghrib time. So take the time, pray Maghrib, pray for me as well. And after that, when you come back, and then we don't have to then meet. If you still have any questions, ping me, on our WhatsApp group, and I will try to respond back to you. But at the same time, you can what you can do is you can actually start looking into next half an hour after Maghrib. I want you to spend in reviewing all these slides, that these different processes we covered for chapter 5, and also you can actually just go to that process group book and then review that chapter 5 once again, which we just covered and completed all of it. So you look at that one, and then if you have start applying those concepts for all those plans onto your projects. So if you spend about 30 minutes or so on that one, I think that your project is going to be in a very good shape. All right.
I'm sorry, brother Bill. Can you repeat that one more time? If we spend 30 minutes, what section?
So I'm saying that you should spend the next 30 minutes after Maghrib. You should we don't have to meet here. You can take your time and individually you can work on your projects. And then what you need to do is, as part of your homework, which I gave yesterday, is yesterday I just asked you to do until work breakdown structure, but today what I'm asking you to do, in addition to the work breakdown structure, but also you have to do the complete planning of your project. So you should be, now that we have completed the planning phase, so all you have to do is just go in, prepare your project for completely, and start writing those different project plans. I have shared the templates with you. Start just filling up those templates, and then your project is going to start shaping up then once you see that.
Thank you.
Any other question anybody has before we go? Nope. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. We are gonna now meet next week again. I'm not still sure if by next Saturday we will be able to meet in person or not, because next Saturday we still have this MPR the venue that may or may not be available for us. But I will let you know once I find out from MCF whether we have that available or not. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lafis.